Hey everybody, and welcome to another Birds on a Blue Note episode. Got your captains here today, and we are going to be quickly recapping the Mets series before we move on to obviously some important, injury news and then also a community mailbag. So stick around for that. We got some what we feel like are good questions from the community that, you know, we can at least chat about for a bit. So, hopping right into the Mets series was meant to be a three-game series. Game one there, we had, uh, rough start. Weren't really able to get anything going on Manea to begin with and whatnot, but you know, in the sixth inning, we were able to put up 3 runs there, tie the game. So you had a thought,
Sign to
maybe we could do this. And then unfortunately in the seventh, Kittredge, man's been solid all year. You can't, he was bound to give up a run. It's just at the wrong time. Offense couldn't come back to help him out at all with anything. And we lose that first game 4-3
I
in
think that's
regular.
also the eighth game this season we've lost while the pitching staff has allowed 4 runs or less. So, uh, just small note there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, and that is something to focus on. Gibby again went 6 innings, 2 runs. What more can you ask from your number five
Live here, buddy.
at the end of the day? You can't really ask for more from him than that quality start. And I mean, yeah, he technically 3 runs, but 2 earned. You know what? You gotta you gotta help the guy out more than that ultimately.
Yeah, we only scored in 1 inning again too. So I mean, if
Yeah.
we've been banging this drum for a while, so I don't think we need to do it
No,
anymore.
and all the offense pretty much came from both of our catchers again, which we're gonna get to in a moment because that isn't gonna exist
No.
anymore for a bit. So moving on to game two, we're able to hop on Budo real quickly in the first, get 3 runs on him, and I don't know about you guys, I thought this was a good sign that the offense was feeling it, and I don't know what the hell happened, but they just
Miles,
decided to check
Miles
out
Michaelis.
from there. Well, Miles held up until the fifth, though. Like, if he keeps
Yeah.
getting that run support, even if it's just 1 run, 1 run, 1 run, how much, confidence does the Mets have going into that fifth if it's more
Here's the
than
problem
3 runs?
though, and Miles was serviceable for most part. He when he got into trouble there in the fifth, Ali actually came out and like you thought he was gonna yank him. And then he decided, nah, you're good. We'll leave you in. And then he gives up what 4 more runs immediately after. He was throwing meatballs. Like anyone could see it. He's last season he gave the most earned runs as a starting pitcher in baseball. This season so far, he's given up the most earned runs as a starting pitcher in baseball. So I mean, at some point you got to like make the hard decision. Like, all right, we're only going to throw you like one time through the order, or we're going to pull you from the rotation completely because we're losing these games. And I mean, he is who he is at this point. His stuff's easy to read. His stuff's easy to hammer. I mean, you saw what like Nemo did. He crushed one like 430 dead center.
Yeah.
I don't. It sucks.
He only had 75 pitches through those 4 innings and 6 runs. Unacceptable. He's more like our five right now when we needed him to be
Or
a
two.
two, which let's all agree, but we pretty much knew maybe at his best he's a two. We weren't getting a two from Miles. That's why many of us were clamoring for number two. But
Dylan Cease is who I wanted. But man, he been bad in San Diego?
yeah,
Not at all.
and I mean Donnie came, got a nice home run himself. You know,
Newt hit
Burley
one in the
keeps
ninth.
hitting,
Newt
but
seeing Newt hit one out was nice because he's been struggling pretty mightily. So hopefully he'll turn things around.
yeah, but I mean, ultimately, big news from this game is losing Contreras on a, you know, called catcher's interference. I obviously have to take a closer look, but I am hearing some people mention that he might have been too far behind out of the box. Now,
His his left,
anybody who's
yeah.
played knows the first thing that you do when you get into the batter's box is you blur the heck out of that back line for a reason. So,
I'm not even
you
mad at
know,
it, to be honest. His
I,
foot was
I'm
barely touching the
I'm
line.
not
Here's the
either.
thing, Albert had the same approach his entire career. If you remember watching Albert play, he did the same exact thing. So if you're gonna praise Albert as a Cardinals fan, you can't be mad at JD Martinez.
No, I'm not either. It's just, you never know. There are some times where there are like clear infractions where, yeah, but still, it's one of those freak things.
That sucks, man. Like we talk about offense. This is the one guy who's been consistently good for ever since like the second half of last season. He's been really good. Like he's 10th right now in all of baseball in WRC plus. So he's the 10th most productive hitter in baseball right now. So like the only guy consistently hitting in our lineup, and now he's gone for 6 to 8 weeks. So
Yeah.
it's like can't win, right? When it rains, it pours, I guess. Speaking of rain, we rained out game 3, thank God, because the series wasn't going too well. Um,
Yeah.
that
So Sonny
stinks.
obviously saved for the start of the Brewers series. So
I
yeah,
mean, we talk about the offense so much, though. It really sucks to have the one guy who's been rock solid for us all season long to just be out.
yeah.
Ain't that right, Ron? Son's coming in to check on. Yeah, he wants a Go-Gurt. So here you go, buddy. Living room, all right? Okay, thank you. Say no big deal. There you go. Um, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, but it was kind of a freak thing. But here's the thing: I see a lot of people, national media people, blaming the Cardinals because they moved Contreras up to steal some more of those low strikes,
Yeah.
which is true. They did that. But the other part they're not mentioning is that every other organization and catcher in baseball is also doing the same thing. So I hate to go on a rant about like the automated strike zone and umpiring and stuff, but like if there's an automated strike zone, this doesn't happen because you don't need to be stealing strikes. So and we've seen a lot of bad umpiring already this year. As a Cards fan, these zones are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Is these catchers moving up and towards the plate a little bit?
Well, yeah, because too many, with all the spin and everything, these umpires aren't going off where, you and I have both umped before, it's supposed to be where the ball crosses the plate, not where it goes into the catcher's glove. It's
Yep.
where it breaks the plane of the plate. Does it cross that strike zone at all? The one ball off to the side on both sides, little below down to the knees and up to like the chest area.
Yep.
Does it
Bottom of
cross?
Major League's bottom of the lettering, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right with the weird letters, but um, so I mean, ultimately, it's one of those things where it, it's such a hard thing to call to begin with, and with all the advancements in movement, speed, and stuff like that, asking guys wearing glasses to pick up exactly where a 100-mile-an-hour pitch across the plate can be a little tough, even when it's their job. I mean, the automated strike zone with all of its errors can solve so many problems and still let the umps continue to do their job of making those like actual judgment calls of safe check swings, all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's no turning back. We're now without Contreras for at least estimate is 6 to 8 weeks because he has surgery. Could be longer ultimately because he is going to be receiving balls to that arm, so it isn't like it's his non-catching hand or anything like that where he can maybe get in a little bit quicker. But I mean, it remains to be seen. I think if anything, we may see him come back as a DH before we see him come back catching. I think that's a genuine possibility.
I mean, you hope it's on the lower end, but then again, if the season's already lost at that point, you don't want to risk bringing him back too soon either. So I mean, it sucks, but like,
Yeah, 2 months is a lot of
yeah,
time. We'll know closer to that whether it's worth rushing him back or
right, for sure.
if we're dead in the water ultimately.
I mean, it sucks. So, like, not only from the hitting perspective, but like watching him play, he's one of the more fiery, passionate guys on the team. And I think that like when you're winning, especially when we're not winning right now because everyone's underperforming, but when you are winning, that kind of attitude can be infectious on a clubhouse, and just like not having that is gonna be
when you're
detrimental.
losing, you need
Well,
somebody like that too, though.
yeah. And
And
usually like Lars Nootbaar is that kind of guy too, but he's struggling so much that you don't see that from him too much right now either. It's you don't want it to be misplaced, but when you're like playing well and you have that attitude, it can be infectious.
yeah, absolutely. And it's just a big blow to the offense, to the team as a whole,
To
and
the
it's going to
defense
be,
too, he's improved defensively and he's got a good arm back there. And that's one of the knocks we talked about Herrera is that he doesn't have much of an arm. So you hope the opposing team doesn't take too much advantage of that because if they're just able to run all over us, that's just going to be another issue that we're facing as a club.
yeah. And they're going to. We've already seen it when Herrera's been there. The word is out that that man has a noodle for an arm and he can't beat you.
And he's
So,
their primary catcher now. It's I
yeah,
guess if he was hitting like he was hitting at the beginning of the season, whatever, you live with it. But right now he needs to turn it back around again.
yeah, it'll be real interesting to see what comes of that. But, any final thoughts on Met series, any of that before we move into the mailbag?
I mean, offense showed little bits of signs of life, I guess, but a lot of us from our catcher who's gone now. Um, you hope Donovan and Nootbaar hitting those home runs kind of helps get them back into the swing of things a little bit, and it can help pick up the load from when Contreras is out. But then again, we've seen these little sports spurts of offense before with people like Goldie, and like, all right, he's coming back around, and then he goes hitless in May. So I don't, it's hard to tell. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's offense again.
Yeah, and nothing's changing with that. So, and we're still here with
No change.
no movement. But real quickly before that we get into the mailbag, one thing that we are hearing is there are rumblings that Ollie might be starting to lose the front office support. That now that could be a combination of, just the performance plus his, media comments. Again, I'll stick to saying to the national media that you're trying everything and it's not working is not going to go over well with the big bosses ever ultimately, because they're not looking for that sort of stuff. They want to know that you're doing things and, keep it quiet if it's not working. You don't have to go telling everybody that. It makes you look pretty incompetent ultimately.
Yeah, and I think these mostly started on Twitter too, and I'm not sure if it's a verified source or not. It's questionable at the very most, but you would think like with the way the season's going, the way last season went, that this would be more true than not. Um, like I said, we don't want people to lose their jobs for sure, but like we've mentioned in the last pod a lot, something needs to change here because we you can't lose to a historically bad White Sox team and get swept by the Mets at home who were reeling at the time. Um, yeah, you just can't do it.
I mean, there have to be consequences for adults' actions ultimately. And, you know, like we said, we don't want anybody to lose their livelihood, but, you know, these are grown men and there has to be some responsibility. It's too early to trade any guys, so somebody's gonna fall on the sword if things don't get turned around real quickly.
Yeah,
But
the roster we have is the roster we have, and I don't see that changing significantly in the next couple days. I mean, that almost never, ever happens in baseball. So it
no,
is
yeah,
something needs to change. It just all
it,
right. Yeah.
exactly. So hopping into the mailbag, I'm gonna hit off on one that we've touched on a little bit, so we can just knock this one out quickly. Uh, CBC wants to know, with Sonny being the best player on the trade market and 2 years of control, Uh, should we be trading him?
I'll let you touch on that because I think you said it perfectly last time. So go ahead.
Sonny is a top end free agent who is right now in another possible back-to-back Cy Young year. If you trade him, it sends a message to free agents everywhere who value their ability to pick their team, especially the top guys and where they play. It sends a message to them that you don't give a shit about that. And if things go wrong, you don't care about their preference and you're willing to just ship them out. It's different for somebody like Nato or Goldie, where they've been here a while, they've been serviceable, and maybe you could argue with them, hey, we want to give you like a fresh start somewhere or a more competitive team. But no, Sonny chose to be here this offseason. Same should technically go for Contreras, who chose to be here last season. Now, obviously, that's made a little easier with his injury. Does take him a bit off of the market, but those two guys, for sure, as far as free agent guys, they should not be getting moved as well as, a few of those core guys that we want to build around like Wynn and Walker. But yeah, I trading Sonny would be one of the worst things we can do, even if it's going to get us a really good haul. I think it would shoot us in the foot in the future.
Well, especially like it kind of depends what our plans are this upcoming off season and the off season after. But if we want to be players in the market, that is a really bad look, as he said. And there's some notable guys out there that I don't know if we'll be able to sign just because of how much money they're going to get. But as a Cards fan and watching this offense all year, you would think like, and especially with Goldie on his way out, we need to fill that void somehow, some way with I believe a consistent middle of the order threat.
Hmm.
These guys cost money too. So like, and you don't want to sign someone like right after you signed something like you were saying, Sonny, and then ship them out immediately after, because then that is the wrong message. So I agree completely with you on your analysis there.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. You never know what type of offer they'll get. You know, Sonny wants to be here, good or bad. That's a good message to send. Same with Willie. Those are the guys you want to
And
build
they've
around.
done their part too. There's a difference between wanting to be here and shit in the bed and then wanting to be here and balling out. And both those guys have been fantastic players for us. They're our two best players.
You
So
you could easily argue that our, you know, all of our best players this year have been the ones that wanted to be here so far. You got Willie, you got Sonny, you got Lynn who wanted to come back here, and even Gibby
and
on that
Gibson, yeah,
discount.
Gibson's
Like,
like he's what every start he's had has been a quality start now, I think, except the one.
only
One
pitcher.
inning, the one inning again against the Marlins. We go back to that.
He's the only
Yeah.
pitcher in majors, I believe, that has gone 6 innings in every single one of his starts
Yeah, and it's
against our
just
number
every one of them
five.
has been quality, I think, too, except for the one. So, I mean, I was critical of that signing, but I'm happy to be wrong about it.
There were plenty of reasons to be critical about that, but he has done his job better than anybody could have expected. Even those like me who were like, hey, for what we're getting him as an innings eater, like I did not expect innings eater and consistent quality starts over and over and over again. I was
Yeah.
expecting him to get shelled on a more consistent basis, but he has done his job. And even when it looks like it was going that way, he settled down and,
Yeah, and that says a lot about his character too, and
yeah,
just like his mentality on the mound also. Because like a lot of people would, once they start to lose it a little bit, they really like Miles this year. So
like a
that's
certain Mr. Martinez that we had for a while.
yep.
Gets one wrong call and it just goes to his head. So moving on to the next question from Aaron Emmett's fan. Appreciate you listening to us, man. As far as as far as this question goes, wanted to talk about the lack of pull and poor performance around swinging at strikes middle pitches. So he mentions here Ward has said he wants the guys to be patient and hit their pitch, but it seems we are being too patient and then swinging at bad pitches. Is this an approach problem or a lack of execution issue? Seems like the league has figured this out and we just aren't adjusting. And I know we touched on this, I believe, a little bit last episode with them being consistently late. Do you want to start off with this?
All right, so this is actually a pretty interesting question, and we've talked about it a little bit before. Um, I it's hard to say whether that it's an approach thing versus like a player thing versus like I've made this comment before, like Goldie and Arnaudo both talked about being in between. I don't know if you've heard that, which makes sense if you watch them play. They're almost like unsure whether it's a breaking ball or a fastball. And like when you're swinging the bat like that, you're going to be late on every fastball, which is what we've seen a lot from Goldie. But then you look at like players like Burleson, or like Lars Nootbaar when he makes contacts, their exit velos, their barrel percentage are still pretty high. So it's not like a bat speed thing for all players or like even like an approach thing. It's just I don't know. There's been regression. There's been major regression, obviously, from a couple of our star players. But it's we went from being 2021, we had the highest pull percentage of barreled balls in baseball. And that season resulted in two MVP candidates finishing second and third. And then we had the historic Albert 700 chase where he was just playing out of his mind in the second half. So maybe it is a bit of an approach thing with certain players, but it's not across the board, which is weird because, like I said previously, players like Wilson Contreras or like Alec Burleson have been hitting the crap out of the ball.
Yeah.
So you almost wonder if like the players are kind of like all in their heads at the same time in the same funk. But then again, like eh, it's hard to say without being in the locker room and knowing what's being said to these players. Uh, I would like I've mentioned before, I don't like the way that's like I keep picking on Goldie, but Goldie's been sorry, I love you, Goldie, but you've been one of the worst hitters in baseball so far this year. He lets a lot of meatballs go right down the middle of the plate without swinging, and that kind of drives me nuts too. I would be more than okay with him swinging at that and him getting out in the first pitch if it meant he swings at a good pitch. Like we saw in the ninth inning the other day where he took two down the middle and then swung at one and foot outside the zone because he's down 0-2 already. That's a much worse at bat, in my opinion. I know you don't really work the pitchers count, but like you let the two best pitches go right by and then he swung at garbage because you're in the hole. Um, so yeah, I mean, obviously we're not pulling a fly ball, so like that in between comment makes a lot of sense. Baseball is a 90% mental sport, so if you're sitting there and you're like you're sitting if you're sitting off speed and a fastball comes by, you're already too late. And I think that's what a lot of these players are doing right now. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? Because like I said, it's hard for me to know without knowing what's being taught. But like I said, you have outlier players who are still crushing the ball, so it's not even a team wide thing. It's just a few of the guys we really need to get going are doing this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what it comes down to for me is it's all speculation. We're not in the locker room, we're not behind the scenes. We only have to go off of what we're hearing, unless like a player actually comes out or a coach comes out and says something. But the fact that some guys are doing well and others aren't leads me to believe it's that mixed bag approach where some of it is what we're doing just not clicking with certain guys, and for other guys it makes total sense. You know, guys like Wilson and Burley's hitting better than ever, it seems like,
Yep.
you know. So, I mean, whatever it is, it's clicking for those guys, and for others it isn't. And that's interesting as well. It seems like some of these um guys have a misunderstanding maybe with the approach and what they're supposed to be doing at bat. And it's leading to these confusing looking at bats where, yeah, like you said, they look completely lost, which shouldn't be happening for guys that have consistently crushed over, 280 for their careers, you know?
And that too, it's like one approach is not going to work for every player, also. So, I mean, if you're trying to teach every player to go the other way, you're doing it wrong. Because you look at someone like Nolan Arenado, who's a Deadpool hitter. He's never been the guy to hit the ball super hard, but he's always had the power numbers because he's been a Deadpool hitter. And you've seen it this year too. He's hit a lot more like soft singles to the right side. And that's great and all if you could do that like when you're down 0-2 or if it's like just off the plate, but we need him to get those power
But
numbers back up too. So
but the problem I have with that line of thinking is these are major league hitters who know how to produce and know how to hit. A hitting coach at this level is not teaching a guy like Soto or Goldie how to hit. They're helping them try to tweak things like, hey, I know noticing you're dropping your shoulder or you're, pulling your arms in a little too much and losing some bat speed. Doing those little, they're trying to help you make tweaks. They're not coming in and being like, hey, Goldie, that MVP, especially a guy like Ward who already knows Goldie, he's not reteaching Goldie how to hit at all. So like that's part of my problem I have with this like whole is it the you know is it the strategy now. I will say that we're not changing our game strategy in game,
yep.
so if a
I was gonna
pitcher
bring that
is
up
getting on
also.
top of us, Ward is not going to be like, hey guys, let's try jumping on the first pitches. Now it's staying the same throughout the whole game, and that is not your job as a hitting coach. That's where you're supposed to be stepping in and recognizing what the pitcher is doing, relaying that to your players if they're not already aware of it. And in between innings, you guys should be working in the cages on those things. They have cages in pretty much all, dugouts and whatnot in behind. The guys are able to go back and get a few swings in usually if they need to. So it's just I don't get it, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of
Yeah, it's
assuming.
tricky because like we're dead last in barreled pool balls and baseball. And actually, I mentioned this before in the StatCast there. So, like, as a team, we're not pulling the baseball at all, which leads you to believe it might be kind of an approach thing. But at the same time, if you watch these at bats, like from player to player, Burleson doesn't have that issue. Contreras doesn't have that issue. It's the guys that we need to like really barrel the ball. And I think Arenado still only got 2 barreled balls on the season. So it's tough because like you watch the at bats and they do look in between. They look like they're unsure whether that's going to be a fastball or whether it's going to be an off speed. And when you're in the box and you're thinking too hard about it and you can't decide before you swing, and like I said, you're already too late. So
Yeah,
and it's happening to the guys we don't need it to happen to. Like usually it's the bench players who don't get much playing time or who are caught in between because they don't have the playing time every day.
yeah,
So it just kind of sucks that it's happening across the board for us, with the exception of like 2 people and one of which just hit the IL. So
yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see how things go, but in the spirit of us running out of time, us having one last question we wanted to at least touch on. Now, this is something again I know we've said before, we're going to be having a longer in-depth look at this, and that is still the plan. But Harp wanted to know, um, how we feel the organization would look differently if not for the passing of Taveras, having to trade for Azuna, which means getting rid of Gallon and Alcantara. Do we still have them? Do we overspend on other things? And it really was one of those, I mean, just to hop on this real quickly first, it was one of those black holes. He was a top hitting prospect that we had already seen from his short time in the majors. The kid knew how to hit. Kid knew how to field. He was fun
had
to
a
watch.
beautiful
He was
swing too.
explosive. He was what we needed in that outfield. And yes, so losing him creates a black hole where you're scrambling to replace a spot that you thought you had at least for the next 5 to 7 years covered with him there. And so yeah, that leads to trading. You know, I mean, Gown and Alcantara still could have been gone because of how low they were on our prospect rankings at the time, but they might have been gone for a different power bat. And it just changes the whole complexity of that when you lose a top prospect for that type of reason. It isn't like an injury where it's like, oh, we got to wait a year or two to get it back. It's like he's gone. He's just gone. There is no trading him. There is no comp pick for him being gone. It's he's just lost, and it was a tragedy. But you know, so many it's a domino effect. So much can be traced back.
Yep. It was a franchise altering thing that happened that had ripples throughout the rest of MLB. And there's like a really deep rabbit hole if you really want to go down and how like the death of Taveras changed the whole league. Because like if you look at just even the immediate after effect is we traded for Hayward, who then had a career year with us and then signed with the Cubs and then allegedly gave that speech that helped the Cubs win the World Series. And then that increased the value of every other player on the Cubs. And then Rizzo went to the Yankees and Baez went to the Tigers. And then you have the Ozuna trying to fill the Hayward thing later on. So like Alcantara went to sign with Marlins, and then Gallen gets flipped again from Miami to Arizona. So that brings Jazz Chisholm to Miami, and that puts Gallen on the Diamondbacks, who just helped lead them to a World Series last. Like there's so much that are directly related to what happened with Taveras, and it sucks, because like that was the him, and then I guess Walker is the next closest thing, just right-handed that we had to Taveras, but Taveras was a higher rated hitting prospect than Walker is. I
Yeah.
mean, we talked about how Walker's potential.
And,
Taveras was
and a
higher,
natural outfielder too.
and it was
Outfield was his
left-handed too,
position.
and like I know left-handedness doesn't mean most to everyone, but like he had like the most perfect, beautiful looking left-handed swing. It sucks. It's a tragedy for sure, and like I said, changed the course of the entire league, included with the Cardinals. Um, I don't want to forget about you, Jenny, because you're one of our subscribers and you're always commenting nice things. That Nashville, the Bill DeWitt's moving the team to Nashville is just a baseless rumor that's not going to happen. So I just want to
Yeah.
touch on it. It's 5 seconds. It's not going to happen. You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah, he's not taking that team anywhere. If anything, and I'll keep hammering this, like fans boycott if you want, do what you want. It is your money. I will never force anybody to spend. Just make sure you're continuing to support the team in other ways, listening through free radio, stuff like that. But like the only thing that the boycott is going to do and not having fans in the seats, he's just going to lower payroll. I think somebody said he said as much earlier today on a podcast elsewhere, but that's all it's going to do. The main driving revenue factor these days is TV and ad revenues and then those in-stadium sponsorships. So most teams pretty much spend every penny that they get from uh,
Ticket
in
sales.
stadium and ticket sales, they put that back right into the team, and the rest of that they just pocket, the rest and whatnot. So if that goes down, the spending on the team is just going to go down. So
You'd
just
hope
be
not.
prepared for that,
You'd
but
hope
it's
not.
not
I
going
mean,
anywhere.
I understand the sentiment. Like,
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case. But you can't fault anyone for wanting to not wanting to spend money on this team right now. They're not
Nope,
fun to watch, even though
not
they're
at
bad.
all.
They're also not fun. So like, it's a bad combination.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for joining us on this mailbag and recap episode. We hope you guys enjoyed. Let us know your thoughts on any of the mailbag questions. We'll see you next time. Have a great night.